I'm so impressed by this film and the people in it. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation with some of my very favorite people. Joining me, we have Matt Wilson, the Deputy Director of the Siċaњġu Community Development Corporation. Give him a round of applause, please. My dear, dear friend, Sara Farley, who is the Vice President of the Global Food Portfolio at the Rockefeller Foundation. Give her a round of applause. And the amazing Matthew Thompson, who is the Director of Food 2050. Give him a round of applause. So Matthew, I'm going to start with you because we've talked about this before. You began filming this incredible documentary during the height of COVID. And I want you to talk a little bit about how important it was to put hopeful stories together during a not so hopeful time.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, the world shut down and then we were told we need to go travel the world. So it was a very meaningful time to travel and talk to people about how to envision a beautiful future when we were living a present that was nothing but that. And so everything from just the logistics of trying to get to different countries that were supposedly shut down for a long period of time, and then being there and then trying to talk to people and say, hey, you know, right now our context is pretty negative, but you guys have a vision of something that's extremely positive. How can we, you know, extract that from you? Was very healing. The process of telling these stories was healing. The process of putting all of our imaginations into a brighter future. And so our job as storytellers and the filmmakers, a lot of them in this room that went around the world, was just to try to give the same level of care and craft and discipline towards telling these stories as these people were giving towards changing their local communities, because they wake up and they actually are people with great responsibilities on their shoulders, and a lot of people's lives are dependent on their ideas and on their work. And so during COVID, on all these things where all these problems were just exacerbated, I would say it was just, we were very grateful to be able to go and tell their story. So.
Yeah, I know what a privilege it was for you and how, you know, deeply you felt all that. And Sara, one thing that I think is important, you know, all of the stories that Matthew and the team were documenting, that didn't stop with this film. The Rockefeller Foundation continues to support and be heavily involved with these projects that we saw. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's really, as Roy said, you know, this Vision Prize was partly born of this idea that philanthropy sometimes has a hard time listening. And we really need to listen better. And I think that's not just a challenge in philanthropy, it's a challenge in society. We're so increasingly divided. And so this is a very special act of listening to then inform what our next steps would be. And so from this film, which was such a more explosive response in terms of receptivity and willingness to embark on what was a very lengthy and detailed process of articulating a challenge, but the 1,370 teams, the 4,000 organizations from 119 countries, when we looked across the visions, and we got some data scientists to help us do this, we were able to distill 5 themes that, despite how unique the 7Gen team was from the team in the Netherlands, these themes really were ties that bind. And what they showed us was food is medicine. This is a consistent theme that communities, distinct though they may be, really want to see. They want to see food as regeneration, food, the method of agricultural development, being one of restoration of the soil, of biodiversity, of humanity's connection to each other and to the planet. They want to see food as community. And so we listened. And we not only put forward the Food as Medicine program, as Roy described it, but it became our foundation's first big bet by name, $100 million. We have 5 years that we're celebrating and driving the research behind this. And then most recently, just this past year, we put another $100 million behind this marriage of regenerative agriculture and then focusing on our most vulnerable population, which is our children, our next generation. We call that our regenerative school meals big bet. So we're looking ahead with actually $220 million in our pocket and a beautiful runway to really go after. That's the impact campaign that we want everybody here tonight to understand, that this is the start of this work for us, and we take it with real sincerity and humility that we've heard, and we're responding to what these visionaries asked for.
Absolutely. You have nothing but sincerity and so much genuineness. So, and it really comes through. Thank you so much. So, Matt, the work you're helping to lead at the Siċaњġu Community Development Corporation is more about it's not just about food systems and food sovereignty. It's about the things that Sara mentioned. It's about food as medicine. It's about listening. It's about that regeneration that needs to happen. You've grown so much since the film came out. Can you talk about what you've been hearing through that listening process?
Yeah, I think for us, our vision started with community conversations, and for Lakota people, community organizing is just that: sitting down with somebody at a table with food. Sharing a meal with somebody. So our vision was really based into what our community needed and wanted. And every 7 years, we as people, grow and change. And we're kind of at that point right now where we need to go back into our community and kind of have those same conversations with our people. But for me, what I've learned along the way is that, food is so much more than just something that we consume or a commodity. It's for us, it's really about relationship to that food.
Right.
In our culture, we talk about this fundamental philosophy is called wodakuye, and it's the idea that kinship, but not just kinship to each other as humans, but kinship to the land, to the food, to the water, to the plants. So then it gives us a more deeper level of responsibility in terms of how we treat the land and the food. Makes us think about waste differently as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so also going on the responsibility piece too is that we have a responsibility to generations that are yet to come. And so the decisions we make today, we have to ask ourselves, is this taken away from that relationship or is it helping it? And so that's something that we deeply think about every day and how we make our decisions.
And youth are such an important part of the work that you do. Do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So we also, besides the food we do, the food work we do is we have a Lakota immersion school. So some of the kids you see in the video were part of our inaugural kindergarten class. It's been a couple years now, and so now they are 5th grade. Mm-hmm. So we're having same conversations with our community whether or not we want to continue going on to a middle school. So it's really amazing to see them being so deeply, connected with who they are as Indigenous youth. I'd say one of the hardest things to change is someone's mindset. But these kids, these children are growing up with that, and it's so, first nature to them. They don't have to think, indigenously because they just are living it, and they're speaking the language, and they know who they are, and they're eating the, indigenous foods and modern foods that are grown very locally in the same town as them.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. We just have a few minutes left, and I think it's really important to end with a call to action to this audience. And Gustavo did this with the previous panel, but I just think it's so important to leave this audience with like a to-do list. So, Matt, I'd love to start with you. What's your call to action?
I would say listen more. I think for coming from an Indigenous organization and community, it's always, we never get the platform that we get to, share the work we're doing. So I would say listen to Indigenous people and the work we're doing. These solutions that we're working on aren't, a one size fits all, like the video kind of says. So I would say the principles around our solutions in terms of the relationships, the responsibility, and the future thinking is what anybody can do. And so I just, again, reiterate the listening piece.
That's perfect. Matthew.
So I started going to a lot more farmers markets as a result of working on this project, and going and meeting the local farmers and knowing the people that are touching and growing and cultivating the food, I think is a great call to action that anybody can try to look into. The theme of just do what you can in your local community, in your own backyard, I think was something that I took away after traveling the world, is that really the most important thing is what's happening sort of right in front of me, right around me. And then even more intimately, every one of these groups, I learned a very valuable spiritual lesson about how to look at food. We chose any Ubuntu, and I think everyone having their own spiritual relationship with their food is the way that they will have a better relationship with the planet. And if you think of food in that way, which we've started doing in our house, if it's just praying before food, if it's just thinking about it with intention before buying it, before eating it, that relationship will be forever changed, and what you do will forever be changed. So I think those two things.
I love that. We all need more gratitude. Sarah, you get the final word.
These are both so beautiful. And actually, you said two of my three. The first, meet a farmer, especially for those living in California. You don't have to go that far. And there are so many farmer groups. There's efforts like Regenerate California here in this room tonight. There are local farmers markets. Meet a farmer. Ask, what are you producing? What do you wish you were producing? What's standing in your way? What's helping? What's hurting? So meet that farmer. Two, let's really start to ask what kinds of food cultures existed before. And what that starts to do is interrogate cultures from different immigrant communities that have influenced what's eaten here. And ultimately, it takes us back to indigenous communities that preceded us in this country. What were their food cultures? What happened? Why are we eating the way we're eating today? And really, I think the third, and Matt, you spoke to it in the film, is have the conversation around the dinner table. You all came here. You all saw this film, Food 2050. We are not passive recipients of our future. We can be protagonists in it. So pick a person, pick 10, but sit around a table and ask, what could 2050 look like? Because that was the simple question that Roy asked me when we started this Food System Vision Prize. And we asked a lot of these visionaries, okay, tell us about the technology. What about the policy? What about culture? What about economics? How will the diets change? We asked a lot of questions. You can keep it a little more simple, but by opening up that discourse with those you love and know, or maybe even those you don't know, I think it invites all of us to realize we have agency and we can be bold enough to have hope.
This movie is about boldness. Thank you so much. What a great point to end on. Please give these panelists a round of applause.